Hi again, guys, and welcome back to Quite with a Y. You saw the title. That is not clickbait. The thing is, I'm kind of pulling your leg because this happened a long time ago when I was a kid. It wasn't Susan Wojcicki, former CEO of YouTube, who banned me. It was the other powerful woman in my life, my mom. I think it's honestly a bigger deal that she was the one who did it because she had much more physical ability to enforce it. But at one point in my life, for years on end, I was just not allowed to go on the YouTube website at all. The story starts like this. When I was a kid in elementary school, this was at the very end of the era where everybody had like a family computer. It was a shared PC for the entire household. No smartphones, laptops were like mad expensive and considered like an older adult thing or something. And on top of only having a family computer that everybody else used, they also didn't have any headphones. We just had speakers that played everything that came out of it out loud. It was kind of a setup for failure no matter what. And an important factor around here is that as a kid, I knew all the, cool swear words like fuck and shit and bitch and all that awesome stuff. But like when I heard other people say it in a casual context, it had not clocked in my head as something that my parents wouldn't like or anything but normal language. So my mom, having the harsh Filipino upbringing she did, had some opinions about this. There was more than one occasion where I was just watching a video on YouTube without a care. And as you know, parents do, they walk in at the absolute worst moment, whatever that might be the context for who you are. And she had heard swear words coming out the speakers more than once. She had heard the devil's language coming out of a speaker that she had helped finance. And that wasn't gonna stand, but she did give me some leniency, God bless her. It was kind of a 3-strike system. I forgot how many times it happened, but she walked in, would hear swearing coming out the computer and me listening to it, and she would take the computer away for a bit. I'd have to get off immediately, but eventually I'd get it back in a few days. But there was one particular moment that was more consequential than all the rest and left a lasting mark on me. Back in the day, I really loved Pokemon, and I would replay the Game Boy Advance games over and over again, Gen 3 for life. But I also saw all these like limited time event Pokemon that you couldn't get on your Game Boy anymore unless you had a Game Shark or something, which I absolutely scrambled for. That's a story for another day. But I also learned that apparently you can play completely new or remixed Pokemon games by using ROM hacks on emulators. And that was huge to me. A practically endless amount of Pokemon I could play on my computer at home. That's incredible. They had 4th gen Pokemon in the 3rd gen game. They had custom ones. It was insane to me. It blew my little peewee brain. There was this one I was playing at the time. I think it was called Shining Platinum or some shit, and it was a Gen 3 hack, but it was like really convoluted and my brain could not really figure it out at the ripe age of 8 or 9. So a lot of how I'd skip past the parts that annoyed me was I would just turn no clipping on in the emulator and just walk through whatever obstacle I didn't feel like dealing with. Or I would look up tutorials on YouTube on how to get past this specific part, because this was a big enough ROM hack that folks were making full-on tutorials on how to beat it, full playthroughs to get you past the parts you were stuck on. But the guy I was watching was, I assume, a teenager, and he swore because he was cool. But at the wrong moment, when I was simply looking to YouTube for guidance on how to get to the next part of what I was trying to do, my mom walked in at the absolute worst time. It was this guy saying, damn or ass. I don't even remember. I only remember the results and my mom being, furious, or whatever counts as furious to a person who's like 3 feet tall. She was having none of it, and the usual played out where she would tell me to stop going on the computer like at that instant. I wasn't allowed anymore. But she also told me I would not be getting the privilege to go on YouTube again for a long time, indefinitely. That crushed me. YouTube around this time was still like my passion. I was obsessed with Ryan Higa and all that, but I had just been banned from my favorite place on the earth, a screen. It felt like it had killed all my dreams in front of my eyes, and at the time, it just didn't really cross my mind to not listen to what they're said to do. Instead, I would be real skeevy. I wouldn't break the rule how they worded it, but I would break the spirit of it and find some really stupid roundabout way to do what they said I couldn't do if it technically wasn't in the wording. It's like people on my Discord server just saying, you didn't say that specifically, so you can't ban me. You're still getting banned. And so while I was banned off YouTube, my solution in the meantime was a little scuffed. But back then I was really obsessed with having my own website. I thought that was just the coolest thing ever. And there were these services like Freewebs or something. I think Weebly was another popular one, but basically it lets you make your own quote unquote custom web page, and it would be whatever you chose freewebs.com or something. And on those web pages, you could em a YouTube video into it that you could watch straight from the site. And here's the loophole. When the video ended, it pulled up a bunch of recommended videos still on that website that wasn't technically YouTube, and it had a search bar. For me, that was gold. I was like, well, this is perfect. I can use YouTube without being on it. That's all she said. So for months, I might even be like a few years, I legit watched YouTube exclusively through typing in whatever I could think of to search stuff. If I wanted to rewatch a certain video, I would just have have to remember the title the best I could because there was no other way I was gonna get to it. Like, you couldn't find channels in the way that the search bar displayed results on this thing. It would just be showing other videos in that grid pattern that YouTube does whenever a video ends nowadays. And that was my solution for a while, but eventually, I think like summer of 5th grade, I'm like, no, I can't live like this. And I got on YouTube again. I did it behind my mom's back, and I went a step further. Before this, I had been watching without using an account. I made one. Something my mom, even before all this, was telling me to explicitly not do without her permission. I feel like I have not just crossed the current boundary, but I have gone back and violated older ones. I felt like I'm not just breaking the current rules, but breaking ones that were set long ago. I was in uncharted territory. I was being a legitimate criminal in my head at this time. But the thing is, I would go on it regularly, and I would still just use YouTube like I'd always use it, but at this point, it became a lot easier because the family computer that we had broke, and I ended up getting a laptop not too long after, which I was very happy to have. I still have it to this day, but again, another story for a different time. So I could take it with me and hide the screen from my parents, even if I was in the same room as them. I usually didn't do that, but sometimes I felt a little ballsy. So in addition to still going on YouTube, I found homes in other places like DeviantArt and the rest I don't want to talk about. But I did that for years, and I was paranoid that it would come crashing down on me. I was in middle school at this point. I don't know why I'd still thought this way. There were multiple close calls, usually with my dad, who would walk in on the room without me hearing, and he would see that I was on YouTube. I would be shitting myself, just thinking that I'm done for, coming up with like the flimsiest excuses for what I was doing and why I was on the site. It ranged from schoolwork when I was watching a Smosh video to just listening to music. It didn't matter what I said, my dad would just give me the thing, and I was certain he was going to report back to my mom, and I was going to lose even more stuff. It was going to be an even bigger punishment. It never happened. Eventually, I was actually able to negotiate my way into being allowed to listen to exclusively music on YouTube. I was working my way up back to the privileges I had before, and it was like a slow burn of a process. I was definitely band evading, but it's kind of on my mom for not giving me a terms of service to refer to about like what I can and can't do explicitly. I still wouldn't have read them probably, but she doesn't even have that piece of paper to point back to as something that I broke. It went on like this for years, like I said, and weirdly, right before the start of high school is when I finally broke this curse formally. I had been going on YouTube so casually away from my parents, I had almost forgotten I wasn't allowed. So I went on YouTube in front of my mom where she could see the screen without even thinking about it. The conversation comes up and she's like, "Whoa, what are you doing on that website?" And I was like, oh no. There's no hiding from it now. Dad's goodwill could not save me any longer, and I had to fess up. So I did. And I told her, "Listen, Mom, I've really matured with time. I've really become a better person and can handle this now." And after some convincing, and I think my dad did talk to her or something like about it, I was finally allowed to be on YouTube again without having to sneak around. It was like a weight being lifted off my shoulders. It was something I thought would never change. I thought that was just going to be like the rest of my life. The concept of getting to make choices for myself as an adult hadn't even really like fully formed in my head yet, so I was like, this is just eternity, isn't it? But yeah, I got my ban lifted and I got to do YouTube without so many constraints, and the rest is history. Here I am. Go enjoy this, let me know, and if you want to give me video ideas, go to kwytebox@gmail.com. A little more specifically, I'm looking for things that you guys want my thoughts on, like predicaments you're in, like stuff that is kind of not really tied to a particular event happening right now, unless it's like a good one, but also maybe funny stories that you got that you think might be silly to get my funny little reactions to. Basically, the whole pretense is gone and I'm just robbing Schlatt now. But yeah, piss off.